easy, but teaching smart people, really smart kids, to control the massive power of their brains, that's something that the educational establishment has failed. I grew up in the establishment. I grew up in the establishment in Chile and in the United States. I've got the pedigree, the degrees, the schooling, everything, the social contacts, all that shit. And yet I despise the establishment of both countries, by the way, of both Chile, where my family's from, and the United States. I look at those establishments today and I find them corrupt and despicable. I want nothing to do with them. It's obvious that the mainstream in the Western democracies hates men. And they express it daily, and they express it on every day to every age group in just about every situation. It's only the people in the democracies of the West who have deluded themselves into thinking that it's a conspiracy theory, this hatred of men. No. It's an actuality. Boys today, what happens? You know, they go to school, even shit in preschool and kindergarten, and they're medicated, you know, to make them more docile. They're medicated and their rambunctiousness is diagnosed as a disorder. Their natural energy, product of their testosterone, is vilified. It's made to be something bad. Now, these boys who are medicated, well, later on, when they hit puberty and after, what happens to them? They're treated not just as defective girls, which they are, but any screw-up that happens in middle school or junior high school and high school, it can affect their lives for the rest of their lives. It determines what colleges or universities they get to go to, what career opportunities they might have. You know, because a naturally rambunctious and intelligent boy will have an incredibly difficult time sitting still for 8 hours in a schoolroom. A normal boy, a normal, healthy boy will want to go out. He won't be able to sit still. A 13-year-old boy, I mean, to demand of him that he sit there for 8 consecutive hours learning stuff, it's impossible. They can't do it, but they are expected to. And if they don't do it, they are hindered in their life's journey. And who survives this system of education that we have? Who gets into the best schools, the Ivy League schools and stuff like that? I saw it. You know who it was? The more compliant boys. Not the smartest boys, the more compliant ones. The ones who didn't, you know, object to anything that they had to do, who jumped through every hoop. Basically automatons. Those were the guys who in our current society progressed. And that's when I saw all these other kids, all my classmates, docile as Hindu cows, really. I mean, just, they did not make waves because, of course, because the system has been created such to advance those who are compliant, who are agreeable, who are, quite frankly, less masculine. Soy boy cucks. Those are the ones who rise in our current society, and that's a fact. Now, once those young men graduate from college or technical school or whatever the fuck, I mean, you know, mid-20s, right? How are they treated? Well, everything that they do, the natural expression of their masculinity is called, well, it's called toxic masculinity. It's labeled as a disorder. Just being a man is a bad thing. It's labeled a disorder, it's a toxic masculinity, and the things that men, young men, naturally do, they are vilified. The mainstream society does not realize that its hatred for us eventually going to bring about the ruin of mainstream society, okay? And I'll explain why. Remember I said before how the young men who advance in our current society are more docile, they're more weak. The young men who are rising to positions of leadership in our society today are extraordinarily docile. They you know, go along to get along, right? They don't make waves. Now these men, these weak men, well, in the face of competition from other societies that do not have this problem that our society has, these more masculine societies where men are allowed and encouraged, in fact, to express their masculinity, where their masculinity is a dominant force in those societies, well, those societies, they're going to overwhelm the Western democracies. The Middle Easterners, the Africans, the South Asians, the East Asians, they are going to overwhelm, and they are, in fact, overwhelming the Western democracies. Because the men who have risen to positions of power and leadership in the Western democracies are weak. And those weak men do not have the gumption, the moral self-confidence to defend the Western democracies, to defend this mainstream society that we live in. You see what I mean? And this is catastrophic, okay? So the end of our society will be because these weak men are not able to defend it from the aggression of the other more virile societies that are encroaching on the Western democracies.
Gonzalo Lira has passed away from being neglected medical treatment while being jailed by the Ukrainian government. His crime was making YouTube videos critical of the Zelensky regime. I think it's a good time to reflect on what he was actually trying to teach us, and to summarize his philosophy in one sentence would be something in the order of: be a man and stand up for what is true, else the world will collapse on you and your family from all the lies it is built upon. This means that being disagreeable when faced with convenient lies and propaganda is of the highest importance. Else, people will start to believe the lies and operate from faulty assumptions, causing them to make the wrong decisions. This creates all kinds of problems, like how an incorrect understanding of economics leads to poverty, how a faulty understanding of intersexual dynamics leads to the destruction of the nuclear family, or even how a faulty understanding of who the actual players involved in geopolitics are could trick whole nations into supporting unjust wars. This is also why people like Gonzalo Lira is so dangerous to the criminals in power, because if people spoke up like him, they wouldn't be able to deceive and control us with their propaganda, which was also the reason that the US government did nothing to get this particular American citizen out of jail. They even went so far as to remove his Wikipedia page, trying to memory hole his whole existence. If I could have relived my life, I would have wished that the narrative was more truth-centered, because when I was young, I operated under so many faulty assumptions fed to me by the mainstream, which made my life miserable. If there were more people out there, like Gonzalo Lira, that spoke the truth, it could have saved me a lot of hardship. Coach Red Pill was actually an inspiration for me to start a YouTube channel, because I saw that other people are suffering from bad models of how reality works. More specifically, during COVID, people were not aware of all the sausage making involved in the academic process, and that they shouldn't trust the science, as the media told them to. I felt that I got so much value from Gonzalo's videos that there should be more people like him that could cut through the crap and just say it like it is. Back in April last year, Gonzalo Lira actually contacted me, saying that he follows me on YouTube and suggested that we do a roundtable together. We never got around to doing so due to his arrest, but knowing that he enjoyed my content was a badge of honor, but also makes it extra hard to see him get murdered. Some people question how such a wise man could be so stupid, staying in Ukraine while talking shit about its corrupt government. But few people knew that Gonzalo Lira had a heart condition and did not believe he had many years left to live anyways. So his last videos was basically his way of saying fuck you to the establishment, demonstrating that he would die for what he believes in. I want you as followers to know that I appreciate you very much, and we're in this pursuit to get closer to the truth together. My channel recently hit 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I hope I can inspire more people like Gonzalo inspired me to make truth-centered content themselves, because if we start multiplying, we cannot be stopped.
The second outcome, and frankly it's the outcome that I personally hope, is that our current system, the system of the Western democracies, it disenfranchises the more energetic, the stronger young men. The fact of the matter is that I myself feel disenfranchised because somebody like myself, with the energy and gumption that I have, I should be better positioned in my society. But for various reasons, I have been marginalized. And there are a lot of young men who are very, very capable, but they have been marginalized. The kid who is he just couldn't sit still during high school, so he got shitty grades and therefore fewer academic opportunities and therefore no opportunities to rise. There are a bunch of YouTubers I've noticed that are extraordinarily intelligent, extraordinarily cultured, I mean, well-read, all the rest of it, who you realize that they had no outlet in the straight world. They had no possibility of advancement in the straight world. Because when they were young, they were too rambunctious, they were too energetic, they were too male, okay? They were too masculine to make it in the straight world when they were young, and so they were marginalized. And as they've become adults, they found an outlet for their creativity and their intelligence and knowledge and erudition by way of having a YouTube channel or some shit like that, right? But those young men, disenfranchised young men of quality, well, those young men, they keep on being vilified and stepped on. And what's going to happen eventually? Well, they're going to coalesce. They're going to coalesce and they're going to arise. They're going to arise and overthrow this mainstream and usher in some potentially new social system. I personally hope that that is the case, because the system that we currently have is catastrophic, because the Western democracies will be overrun by these more virile people, the people of Africa, of the Middle East, of South Asia and East Asia. We are seeing it now. We're seeing it in Europe. The Europeans are being overrun, and frankly, it's gotten to a point of no return. The Europeans are done for, unless the disenfranchised young men, and there are legions of those disenfranchised young men of talent who the society has stepped on and marginalized because when they were young, they were not docile enough, okay? If those young men coalesce and strike back at the invaders and take back their continent and reform their society, well, maybe, under those circumstances, there's a chance. There's a chance of renewal. There's a chance that those disenfranchised young men, so many of them and so brilliant, they can take up the reins of the Western democracies and build something new, okay? But if our society continues to repress the young men and is successful at repressing those marginalized young men, and if those weaklings who are in power, people like Marco Rubio, for instance, fucking quisling little wimpy faggot fuck, guys like that, who have just no moral self-confidence, no gumption, no energy, no strength of character. If those guys remain in power, if those guys are the ones with their hands on the wheel of the Western democracies, they're going to do nothing because they don't have the balls to do anything, to save our society. And so our society will be overwhelmed. See? And this is the tragedy. The hatred that the mainstream has for men and masculinity, that hatred is going to cause its own destruction